What is up, everybody? Welcome on into this edition of the Warchant Report, powered by Cummins. I'm Aslan Hajavandi, joined by Ira Schofel, managing editor of Warchant.com, and Jeff Cameron, wildly popular talk show host right here on Warchant TV, as well as 93.3 FM, Real Talk. You can hear him Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, 1 to 3 o'clock. He and Ira, they have to hang out with Corey Clark for 2 hours on Tuesdays. They call it Seminole Headlines. Pre-game show going down this weekend. Jeff Cameron with you and Tom Lang.
Absolutely. Every home game, buddy. And actually most of the road games, too, we've gotten together. So there's good times. It'll be bright and early in the morning. Maybe a mimosa for everybody.
Tune into that, everybody. And while you're at that, check out Cummins, shop.cummins.com. Use that promo code TAILGATE, TAILG, numeral 8. You can save 10% off owning portable generators, portable power stations, as well as RV generators. Check it out, shop.cummins.com. Noles, high up on that corporate ladder, hooking you folks up. Florida State taking on Syracuse this afternoon, gentlemen, or rather Saturday afternoon, 12 o'clock, ABC. Syracuse coming maybe a little bit limping into this one. 2 straight losses. They've been outscored 50 points in the last 2 tilts, namely Clemson and North Carolina. Jeff, let's start off with the offense for Florida State. We'll look into the Syracuse matchup in the later parts of this show. But what do you want to see unlocked for this offense? The running game got back on track, so I guess you can check that off your list. Is it unlocking the center of the field, throwing underneath, things like that? What do you want to see unlocked for this offense as they take on Syracuse Saturday in Doak Campbell Stadium?
It's interesting. I'd like to see him sustain it over a couple of weeks, though, still run the football. You know, last year, Trey Benson, I think, had 130-plus yards rushing against this Syracuse team. I think you can run against the 3-3-5. I like the matchup there. I think Florida State's offensive line should dominate the down lineman for Syracuse. I know Syracuse wants to let those linebackers run free and make plays, but if you can get to the second level pretty quickly again, like they did a year ago, I think you can run the football here, Aslan. So while I would like to see them find ways to consistently attack the middle of the field and use Destin Hill and guys like that a little bit more effectively, if you have opportunities that a defense is presenting itself to, then you got to take advantage of it. And I think Florida State will have success running the ball here.
Ira, it seems weird to kind of quibble over this offense. I mean, they're 6th in the nation in scoring. That's an important statistic, and they're doing quite well at it. Is there anything that's leaving something to be desired or that needs to be kind of enhanced this coming week and shown on display against Syracuse, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to, as Jeff was saying, as you were saying earlier, I mean, I'd love to see just them use some of the totality of the weapons. Early this season, the first month, they obviously keyed a lot on Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson. But Johnny Wilson left the game against Virginia Tech early. He didn't play the whole game. We won't know his status probably until Saturday's game against Syracuse. But if he is having any lingering effects from being shaken up in that game, here's a perfect opportunity to get some of these other guys involved. I thought Destin Hill's catch last week was outstanding, and you see that coming more often in practices. And I think there's a chance that maybe we'll see more of that on a Saturday. I also think, because of Syracuse's aggressive style on defense, they are going to blitz. They're going to bring pressure from a lot of different areas. You should be able to hit them with some of the screens and some other things like that maybe some draws, some things to kind of use their aggressiveness against them. So I think this could be a great opportunity. Look, Florida State, over the years, going back to Dalvin Cook and the huge games he had against them, Florida State's run the ball really well against Syracuse traditionally. And so I think that'll be a big part of it as well. But I just think it's just seeing the whole sum of all the parts maybe come together for one game.
Ira, is it tricky at all for Florida State to maybe get up for this one? Syracuse coming off, I don't know if the 2 straight losses affects it or just the fact that maybe you put on the film or you just remember what happened last year. Is that something they have to guard against, you think, going into this game?
I think a little bit. And Mike Norvell said that, he said the same thing he's been saying all year. It's about us. It's not about the opponent. And the idea is that they don't get up for this game and not get up for that game. And I get all that, but those kids can read the scores. And I think that North Carolina score to me was not a great score coming into this game because North Carolina obviously was like 40 to 7, 40 something to 7. And it looked like Syracuse was not competitive. A lot of weird things went wrong in that game for Syracuse. They had a play that might have been a pick for them, maybe a pick 6 for them that turns into a touchdown for North Carolina. I think there was a block punt that turned into a first down for North Carolina. Like, I don't think that score is indicative of how Syracuse really matches up with North Carolina. They played pretty well with Clemson overall. So, I think this is a game where if Florida State doesn't bring it, it could be a challenge maybe into the second half. If Florida State plays sharp, if they come out the way they did this past Saturday and can sustain it, yeah, Syracuse doesn't belong in the field with Florida State, but Florida State definitely has to. They can't sleepwalk through this, I don't think.
Jeff, I don't know, 17 and a half. I don't know if that seems bizarre as the line for the game. I thought it seemed a little conservative for it, but is it the fact that, Syracuse played Clemson tight and they look at the way Florida State kind of played Clemson, and just how, I guess, serious of a challenge will this be for this team? Or do you think they'll look back on the way they played Syracuse last year and maybe waltz into this one a little overconfident?
Certainly hope not, Aslan. I'd like to think that every team has Florida State's focus. I understand what you're saying. You see these scores like Ira was referencing, and maybe you could, kind of chalk it up and think, well, it's an easy win. But Florida State's already been bitten for whatever reason by some moments where they felt like they were in a ball game maybe they shouldn't have been in. Like, I think they dominated Virginia Tech, but let's not kid ourselves. It was 22-17 in the third quarter. So they've had these moments. We know what happened against Boston College, and we could say that was the flu or whatever else. But the point is, they've been in some close games against teams that we know personnel-wise they were vastly superior than. So hopefully that has their attention and they remain focused. I'll say this, Rocky Long does a good job. They brought him back. He's the guy that kind of invented the 3-3-5, if you will. And he's got linebackers. He's got some good talent at linebacker. But, man, I don't know. It's hard not to look at Syracuse and think that those statistical numbers that they put up, both offensively and defensively, looked real nice against their first four opponents who barely had a pulse. And now that they've played two teams that are actually good, they've looked awful. And it reminds you an awful lot of what we saw last year from Syracuse. As soon as they started playing teams that could play a little bit, they got blown out. So we can speculate all we want. Players can't. They got to go execute. But I'd lean heavy towards Florida State covering that 17.5 number, if that's what you're asking, Aslan.
We'll get to those predictions a little bit later on. Let's keep it there, though, Jeff. When we talk about statistics, I think, you joined us after the second game of the season here on the Warchant Report powered by Cummins. And it was just it was a very small sample size, admittedly, but it was weird to kind of see Florida State's defense ranked quite low in the statistics, the conventional statistics, total defense, scoring defense. Still the same thing is holding up, though. They're 79th in total defense, allowing over 383 yards per game. Scoring defense a little bit better, 43rd, allowing 21 points, which, 21.4 points. You can live with that, it feels like, in 2023. These numbers, though, worse than last year, but it feels like this defense is noticeably better than last year. I mean, can you square any of that up for us, Jeff?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would use a different set of numbers because I think a lot of the conventional numbers don't tell the whole story. And that's the reason that you see more advanced metrics. And you look at some of the numbers that are posted by teams when they're down big, or when Florida State is obviously, putting in their second and third string. That would help help inform the tally there. But I think Florida State is unequivocally better on defense this year. I think anybody that's actually watched the games, and I know you have, and certainly Ira has, and everybody who is probably watching this has paid close attention. Is it a dominant defense? Against the run, it pretty much is. Is it a dominant defense overall, as in a top 10 defense? I don't think so. But is it a top 40 defense? I think so. I think Florida State belongs right there as a top 40-ish type defense with a chance to continue to improve, especially as they work in some of those guys like Conrad Hussey, who we saw get in the game last weekend and really make an impact. I think he's a very talented player. I think there's real length and talent coming to that secondary, and more of those guys are going to start to get reps. I think you'll continue to see Azareye'h Thomas emerge and have a really strong season. So, listen, I think Florida State's defense is trending in the right direction. They can be frustrating at times. They're not a dominant defense, but they're a plus defense. I think Florida State is a better defense for certain compared to what they were a year ago.
Ira, they're like 80th roughly in yards allowed, but only 40th in points allowed. I don't know if any defensive coordinator wants to be a bend but don't break defense, but is that kind of maybe what this defense is? And are they better than last year in your eyes right now?
I think there's some of that. I think part of it was because of the quarterbacks they played. They played all these mobile quarterbacks, and I think that they've not wanted to just tee off and give the opportunity for these quarterbacks to get off into the races. But, I also think we also have to remember last year's numbers were really skewed by that second half of the season. They played a lot of bad offenses, a lot of backup quarterbacks. And, I don't take anything away from Florida State's defense for those games. They went out and did it. They dominated those teams, which led to blowout wins. But the reality is they were not really high potent offenses. So that skews it a little bit. The other thing about it is this season has been every game. There's been a stretch other than Southern Miss. There's been a stretch in every game of about a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half, where the defense has kind of gotten out of their rhythm. They've given up long drives. They haven't been as dominant as they've been. But if you look at the stretches where they've been dominant, then you have to agree with what Jeff is saying. They second half against LSU, they completely shut down LSU's offense, which looks like maybe one of the best offenses in the college football. They were really good in the second half against Clemson. They were dominant early and then late again against Virginia Tech. They had a stretch in the Boston College game for about 2 quarters where they were dominant. So it's just they haven't put it together for 4 full quarters. And I think that's what has left a lot of fans wanting more. But you see it. You see it for stretches, and you feel like they are a better defense. They just maybe haven't been as consistent as you'd like to see.
All right, well, let's dive further into this matchup and see how Florida State lines up across the field from Syracuse. We'll do so right after this, right here on the Warchant Report, powered by Cummins.
Whether the power is out or you're out of pocket, be the hero with portable power from Cummins, a global power leader. Own-in power stations, perfect for mobile lifestyles, small and compact. Cummins own-in power stations provide temporary, off-the-grid power. Use it to charge your mobile devices, power your TV for the tailgate, run a fan to cool the party, or light up the after-dark celebration. Cummins offers power stations from 100 to 1,000 watts. These can be very handy during those temporary thunderstorm power outages we often get in the southeast in the afternoons. Use the promo code TAILGATE, TAILG, numeral 8, for a 10% discount at shop.cummins.com.
Welcome back into the Warchant Report, powered by Cummins. Reminder again, there will be a pregame show. Jeff Cameron, Tom Lane getting you ready for the Florida State-Syracuse game at noon, Doak Campbell Stadium on Saturday, so do check them out. Postgame show as well, 10 to 15 minutes after what we assume will be a victory for Florida State. Gene Williams, Tom Lang, they are powered by the good folks over at DeLuna Coffee for the postgame show, so be sure to check that out. And don't forget Friday, hang out over at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill. Jeff Cameron, Tom Lang, Corey Clark. Maybe Ira and myself will even show up. Who knows?
Come on out.
Bar and Grill. So always a great time, though. That's what we do. It's always a great time. Now let's see what Syracuse is all about. For that, we turn to Matt LaSerre, who caught up with Emily Leiker of Syracuse.com to see what's been going on with the Orange in this 4-2 start this season.
To get right into it, Emily, obviously Syracuse's Garrett Schrader, it's felt like he's been there forever. Him and what other pieces have to do well to give Florida State a run for their money this weekend?
Yeah, Garrett's really the biggest piece, and he's had a down couple weeks the past 2 games. Syracuse has this interesting midseason stretch where they've faced Clemson, UNC, and now Florida State back to back, which is obviously a bit of a gauntlet, and Garrett hasn't been playing up to the standard that I think most people expect of him. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing that needs to work this week, is he needs to kind of figure out what's been going wrong for him and get that going. And then I think too, this offense really has struggled in conference play so far. So it's kind of a little bit of everything, but I think the biggest piece is going to be trying to get the passing game going, because they just haven't been able to do that. They lost Aronde Gadsden, who was their top receiving target earlier this season, and have just kind of struggled to find someone with the consistency that he had. They have 4 or 5 guys who've shown flashes of brilliance, Umari Hatcher, Donovan Brown, Damian Alford, and Isaiah Jones, but none of those guys have been consistent in the same way Gadsden was, and so it's been kind of hard for them to spark something with the passing offense and kind of get it going.
Also, Syracuse started off the season 4-0, then they went into that gauntlet of Clemson and North Carolina. What was the huge difference between the first 4 games and these last 2?
Certainly, Clemson and UNC's defenses were just much more difficult than what Syracuse had seen in the first 4 weeks of the season. But again, I think it's just that lack of consistency, that there is not a guy on this offense right now in terms of a receiver that Garrett can go to and turn to and know, if I'm going to throw this guy the ball, he's going to come down with it. And so that has just been an issue. Their offensive line isn't really in a place for them to establish a strong run game. And Garrett's been pretty open that he is trying not to rush as much this season. As a QB who's known for being run heavy, he's kind of been I'm not trying to take all those hits I've been taking in the past. So he's backed off of that a little bit. So it really just has been that against these more difficult defenses and those more difficult secondaries, obviously it's harder for these less consistent receivers to come out with big plays and come out with the catches they need to.
To transition over to the defense, the big story, at least here, has been all the blitz packages or schemes that Syracuse shows. What challenge do you think that brings to Florida State?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that you always hear from opposing teams when they're getting ready to go against this defense is like, you never know what they're going to do. They're always throwing different looks at you. And obviously that's the case with the blitzes. All season long, the storyline with the defense has been Rocky Long, the defensive coordinator, making some pretty fantastic halftime adjustments and in-game adjustments and just really being able to slow things down for opposing offenses in the second half. It didn't happen as much against UNC, but certainly against Army and then Clemson, we saw like significant changes from first half to second half with the defense. So yeah, I think it could give Florida State a little bit of trouble. Obviously, Jordan Travis, a talented quarterback, and I think he'll be able to kind of figure some stuff out. But I could see towards the beginning of the game for certain, kind of the front seven being able to disrupt some things for Florida State's backfield.
Lastly, how do you think the secondary of Syracuse fares this weekend?
Yeah, the secondary is the part of the defense that kind of has taken a step back. I mean, they're still certainly talented, but they lost some guys through the transfer portal. They lost some guys to the NFL, notably Garrett Williams, who was one of their top cornerbacks. He's now with the Arizona Cardinals. So it's been a little here and there. Their top safety, Justin Barron, is currently playing with a club on his left hand. He has something going on there. We don't know if it's a break or like a fracture or sprain. So I would expect that is where Florida State is going to try and get them, is in the secondary and kind of throw some deep balls and things over their head. Certainly Drake May was really successful with that. With UNC last week, he threw for 442 yards, I think, and a lot of those were deep balls. They got burned several times. So if Florida State's going to find success against Syracuse's defense, which I'm sure they will, I think it is going to be predominantly against the secondary.
Well, once again, that was Emily Leiker with Syracuse.com. Thank you, Emily, for coming on. Back to you, Aslan.
Thanks to Matt. Thanks to Emily for that insight. We'll turn it to you here, Ira. First off, Thomas Schrader, they know this guy maybe better than any other quarterback in this conference. Seemingly, they played him 3 years in a row now. Is he simply too much of a veteran, too savvy to be totally contained and hemmed up, or is this an opportunity for this defense, which, while Jeff points out, good, not great, not dominant, is this the kind of opportunity that sets up for this defense to have a dominant showing? Because if they can stop the run game, the traditional conventional run game, surely they can hem up the passing threat that Schrader poses.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't see a whole lot of offense from Syracuse in this game. I mean, you look at Thomas Schrader, he doesn't seem to be playing the way he was earlier in his career. I think he maybe caught some teams off guard with his running ability. He also had a really dangerous weapon in Rondé Gadsden, a tight end / receiver, and they lost him for the season. And it just seems like their offense has kind of gone into a tailspin since then. They also have some health issues at running back. So this offense is just not what it was earlier in the season. Now, to Jeff's point, they were playing weaker competition. That's a lot different than playing against Clemson, and North Carolina's defense has been good at times as well. But I just, it's unless they find something dramatically different in this game, I think this is an opportunity for Florida State's defense to play really, really well. You've seen Jared Verse start to come on lately. Patrick Payton's coming on. The young defensive backs are starting to get some opportunities to play, and the young linebackers. Tatum Bethune sat out last week. I think got to get healthy. He's looked very good this week in practice. So, yeah, I think everything to me points to Florida State's defense playing really well in this game.
If not now, when, Jeff? I mean, not to say that they'll be dominant the rest of the year, but could this be the game where, that sort of vision that fans, as impractical as it can be, see in their eyes of what a dominant defense is supposed to be and practically keeping a team from getting any first downs, which is not going to happen in this day and age. Is this a kind of game that should set up for Florida State's defense to really assert themselves and show just how dominant they can be if they string together 4 good quarters?
Absolutely should be. I completely agree with Ira. When they lost their top weapon in Gaston, it changed everything. The guys that they've been trying to utilize have been underwhelming. I like the LaQuint Allen kid at running back, but really he's their only threat. The wide receiving core is not good. That's the only way to put it. It's just not. And Schrader's never been a great passer, and now he's lost his best weapon, and he's not running the ball the way he once did, not even this year. Like, if you go back to the beginning of the season, he ran the ball. I don't know if he got dinged somewhere along the way, but he's been certainly reticent to run the football. So if he's not going to run, he's a big, strong kid, obviously, and he pick up yards in big chunks when he does take off. And Florida State's been willing to give that up to quite a few quarterbacks. But if that's the only way you're going to move the ball, you can't consistently run offense that way. So, no, I think it's a similar pattern to the Virginia Tech game here where there's just not much of a threat. I think that the down lineman for Florida State will dominate the run game. And if that happens, we're looking at a lot of behind-the-chains action for Schrader. Not a great passer. Keep an eye on him as a scrambler. But, man, I think this could be a very long day for the Syracuse offense.
And just to give you an idea of what's been going on, if you watch Syracuse's press conferences after their games the last few weeks, like the reporters that cover Syracuse every week have been asking Dino Babers, is Garrett Schrader okay?
Right.
Like he doesn't look like the same guy. He's not been so again, unless this guy just finds it this week, he hasn't looked like the guy people saw a year or two ago.
Wouldn't that be our luck, everybody? Garrett Schrader gets healthy in time to run for 100 yards against Florida State.
Ira, Jeff pointed out astutely in the first segment that, Syracuse added Rocky Long. Maybe they haven't killed it in the portal, but they did bring on a really good defensive coordinator in Rocky Long, who'd been out in San Diego State for quite a while, doing a really good job with that Aztec program. He's the architect of that 3-3-5. It's something similar to what gave Florida State fits last year in Raleigh against North Carolina State and what Tony Gibson runs. The 3-3-5, though, does leave things open, especially for a run attack. Do you think this matches up most ideally for the run game to keep it up and keep a second game of real high production, or will this be a bigger, better test for this offensive line to see if they've been able to figure out the way to communicate to stymie these sort of pressures that they bring on their blitzes and such?
Yeah, I think they'd love to get the running game going and keep it going the way it looked last week. But I honestly think when you look at Syracuse's pass defense, it has not been good all season. And I think this is going to be a really good opportunity for Jordan Travis to kind of show his ability and the receiver's ability to understand what they're seeing defensively. Because as you said, this defense is different in the sense that they're going to bring pressure from a lot of different places. And a lot of times what you see pre-snap is not what you're going to see post-snap. They're going to change. Mike Norvell talked about it after Wednesday's practice. The picture is going to change. What you think you're seeing is different. And sometimes that can be confusing. And sometimes, quarterbacks that are as savvy as Jordan Travis are should be able to kind of handle it. And I think, with this receiving core, you got a lot of experienced guys. You got experienced players in the backfield. I think this offense is going to do well. I don't, if I had to pick, I think they're going to do more damage through the air. But I think it's going to be a pretty balanced attack.
What's the biggest opportunity out there for Florida State in terms of growth, do you think, Jeff, going up against a 3-3-5? Is it bigger run lanes, more risk reward there, or will it be Jordan showing that he can make the right reads once again, as he always has seemingly, against a pretty exotic, tricky defense?
It's interesting. I tend to think this matchup favors whatever Florida State wants. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to try to paint a picture that they have to do one or the other. So I don't know what they'll think. I mean, I wish I were in the film room with them, because when I watch Syracuse, I see opportunities in the run game and I see opportunities in the pass game. Jordan's been incredibly patient in the past, and I think he's probably moving in that direction now that they have some opponents that they can move around up front. So, it's a tough question, Aslan. I'd like to see, obviously, Jaheim Bell returns, let's say, and, that's a huge weapon. I already mentioned Destin Hill. I'd like to see him work in more of these weapons. To Ira's point in the first segment, I'd like to see them have a little bit more balance of usage, if you will. They've got so much talent. We know what Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman are, and I'm not saying exclude them ever, but gosh, you got a lot of other weapons here. So it'd be good to see a little bit greater balance there. I trust that Jordan's getting healthier. He began to use his legs again last week. One thing to note, and maybe this is the answer, Aslan, they've given up a ton of scramble yards, this defense has. And I think it's interesting. Jordan last week showed that he was willing to run. If they flush him out with a lot of that A-gap blitz and stuff that they do, sometimes it's delayed, sometimes it's pre-snap, I think Jordan will just make him miss in a phone booth and run for 30 yards. I mean, if he's healthy, he can do that against this defense.
Interesting to see if Jordan has any motivation, seeing what Drake May did to that defense last week. If it's going to, put some fuel in his tank there. So only one thing left to do, folks. You know what that is, and that's to make some predictions. Us here on the panel and the rest of the Warchant staff will do so right after this on the Warchant Report, powered by Cummins.
Check out the mobile power solutions from Cummins, a global power technology leader. Own-in portable generators are versatile portable generators for your everyday or on-the-go power requirements. Choose a model to power your lifestyle, from working on a DIY construction project tailgating from your pickup truck, or powering your critical home appliances during Florida hurricane season and power outages, Cummins offers own-in portable generators from 2,500 to 9,500 watts. Use promo code TAILGATE, that's TAILG, numeral 8, for a 10% discount on a P2500i at shop.cummins.com. The P2500i can power you for 10 hours on only 1 gallon of fuel, and its double insulated housing keeps you humming at a peaceful 52 decibels. Get it again for 10% off using the promo code TAILGATE at shop.cummins.com.
Welcome back in, everybody. It's the Warchant Report, powered by Cummins. Aslan Hunjavani, joined by Irish O'Fell and Jeff Cameron. Don't forget, again, pregame show with Jeff Cameron and Tom Lang over at Hotel Indigo on Saturday, noon game. You don't want to set up a big, extravagant tailgate. Just roll in town when you can. Go hang out at Hotel Indigo. Tune in to Jeff and Tom getting you ready for that game. Warchant TV as well as 93.3 FM. And then Friday, meet and greet over at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Corey Clark will be there, everybody. You can make eye contact, firm handshakes. Hold it maybe a second or two longer than you think you should. Stare a little bit deeper into his eyes when you do so. Hang out over at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill. We're going to make our predictions, but first, let's hear what the staff, everybody else over at warchant.com, had to say about this game against Syracuse.
All right, we're going with our gut on this one. It's a sleepy nooner, perhaps a desperate Syracuse team, perhaps a Syracuse team that doesn't even want to be in Tallahassee against an offense that's starting to feel confident for Florida State. Vegas says that this is a closer game than the Virginia Tech matchup, which was closer to 26, 24 points around kickoff. This one under 20. I like, and I'll give you a little tip here, Florida State team total 37 or so. Hit the over on that baby. We're going 40 burger this weekend for Florida State. I think there's going to be some moments where we feel a little concerned, because that's what we do. Florida State makes us concerned at times, but then they pull away. That's what they're going to do this time, on the way to a 45-17 victory.
For this week, I think Florida State wins 38-14 over Syracuse. Obviously, Florida State has had trouble with mobile quarterbacks so far this season. Not as bad as at Boston College. It did get better this week against Virginia Tech. But I think Garrett Schrader's kind of a little different. They run a lot of schemes that are more designed runs rather than just scrambling around. There was a few times watching that Purdue game where he literally hides the ball on a fake handoff, and I think that might get us once or twice, but after that would be good. But that's probably where the 14 points will come from. Last week I got a lot of crap that I didn't trust the defense from my friends, and this week I'm going to say I do, and only say they give up 14 points.
I just made it this morning. I think I said Florida State 41, Syracuse 13. I think Syracuse will try to go for more field goals this week than they did last week to try and make the score seem a little less lopsided, but it's just hard for me to imagine with kind of how battered they are at the moment injury-wise and just how they haven't been able to get anything going offensively that they'll be able to score much. And just looking at how Florida State's played this season and particularly in the past couple weeks, I think they will be able to run the score up.
Thanks, everybody, for their picks. A reminder, as always, the Warchant Report powered by Cummins. Check them out at shop.cummins.com. Promo code TAILGATE, TAILG, numeral 8. Save 10% off portable generators, portable power stations. It's PS1000. You can save 10% off. It's at 76%. Week 3.5, I think, of it, juicing stuff around the house. You can't miss out on it. Check it out, shop.cummins.com. All right, gentlemen, our turn now to make our picks for this game. It is a noon kickoff. I like it. Most of you folks at home do not. I want to get home and watch this Oregon-Washington game, see what it's all about. Do some scouting out for the college football playoff game that we have on the horizon for us here, Jeff. But give us your prediction for Florida State and Syracuse as we record and talk about this. Florida State is 17.5-point favorite over the Orange.
I'm with you. First of all, I love noon games because I'm old. Noon games work out for all of us old people and for people who love football. You get to watch more of it, and I'm with you on that. I want to see all these other games. I'll tell you this, guys. Syracuse is fortunate this is not a night game. If everybody was to get kind of lubed up and ready to go and we had a crazed atmosphere and the players were feeding off of that, this is a mismatch, guys. Florida State would pound this team. But because it is kind of a sleepy nooner, I think they'll win very comfortably and sort of go through the motions in the second half. I like Florida State 41-17.
Strong. Ira, you feeling that that optimistic about Florida State against Syracuse on Saturday?
Not quite as big of a difference, but I actually do have them covering. I think, look, this is a game where I think Florida State should win comfortably. I have a feeling the offense may not be as sharp as we want to see it, just because, again, I think some of the things that we see from Syracuse, and because, Syracuse looked so inept last week, I don't know if they're going to get Florida State's best effort. We'll see. That would be impressive if they do, but I got Florida State winning 38-17. And I'm not exactly sure how Syracuse is going to score 17 points, but I think there's a good chance that last 7, maybe even the last 10 may come in the second half. I think Florida State will be comfortably up by 20, 24 points, but I think at the end of the game, it'll be about 38-17.
Fair. You got me kind of here second guessing myself, because usually I'll just throw a number for the opposition. I'm like, they'll score 17. It's 2023. It's what happens. You're going to let points happen. But it's like, man, I just don't know when this defense is dialed in and the offense is moving the ball and Syracuse kind of gets maybe a little downtrodden. The number I had in my head was 45-6. So I'll stick with that. I'll stick with that. I don't know, Jeff. I'm leaning into it. 17.5 points seems way too lean.
I agree.
It doesn't
makes me nervous though, because Vegas isn't dumb. But I will.
They're not. This is the dumb guy, everybody. This is the dumb guy, not the guys in Vegas. But I still think 45-6. I think the offense. I think I was right. They might trip up a little bit early, but I think they'll figure it out. Mike Norvell's been so keyed on to them about edge, response, and if they do have a hiccup or two in the first few drives, I think that'll get nipped in the bud pretty quickly, and they'll figure it out, and they'll get things back on track. So I'll go 45-6. In any event, we all think they're going to cover, so that's always a good thing. Good teams win, great teams cover. Let's be a great team, gentlemen, this weekend. So We'll see how it goes. We'll get you ready for it over on warchant.com. Matchup analysis, Jeff Cameron show getting you ready throughout the week. Pre-game show, post-game show, War Chant wrap. It's all over at the Ultimate Seminoles Sports Source. So hit the thumbs up. We certainly would appreciate it. Thanks so much. For Ira and Jeff, I'm Aslan. Thank you for watching this edition of the War Chant Report, powered by Cummins.